Right after that, Yuxia stormed toward Nayeon. But the moment Nayeon sensed her presence, Yuxia changed her demeanor completely, greeting her gently. When Nayeon heard she was asking about the practical training, she sighed in regret, saying she only managed to secure 4th place. Upon learning that Yuxia's team had ranked 16th, Nayeon even praised them, pointing out that carrying a gunner who slowed the team down and still achieving that result was nothing short of impressive. But Yuxia felt conflicted, just as Nayeon had mentioned. At the start of the mission, they could have reached their destination in 10 minutes, but because of me, they lost almost 50. Yet, in the later battles, I turned things around and contributed significantly. This contrast left Yuxia unsure whether I was really a burden or an asset. After all, she grew increasingly curious about who I really was. In the days following the training, I focused on physical conditioning, to the point that I almost forgot to review the results of the fight. My proficiency had increased by 20%, perception by 0.03, and I even triggered the luck stat, which would enhance my sight and hearing. Because I had intervened in Yuxia's storyline, I also received several hundred SP. Thanks to consistent workouts, many of my stats had improved. After reviewing all this progress, I wrapped up my training for the day. That night, in the luxury wing of the student dorms, Yuxia stayed up late at her computer. On the screen was a replay of my performance during training. She watched it over and over again until one shocking detail caught her attention. In just 3 seconds, I had fired 60 magic bullets from a handgun. Her mind raced. Could a human being really pull the trigger 20 times per second? Or was my gun equipped with some kind of auto-fire mechanism? The more she analyzed, the more suspicious I became in her eyes. My combat ability was extraordinary, yet despite her extensive knowledge of academy talents, she had never even heard my name. Just then, a message popped up from Youngho, the boy who had been staring at Nayeon earlier that day. He asked what she was doing, and she cheerfully replied that she was reviewing the battle. What surprised her was that even he admitted to being curious about the gunner on her team. Word of our match had spread beyond the academy. Even Seonga, vice leader of the Creators Guild, had reviewed the replay. She was particularly impressed with Suho, the swordsman whose elegant footwork, sharp technique, and extraordinary cutting power made him stand out. Seonga knew every major guild in the country would soon be vying to recruit him, and she was no exception. A clean record. He was the perfect candidate. But as she kept watching the footage, her attention shifted. Another figure stood out, a student wielding only a handgun. Her assistant explained that thanks to Yuxia, many people had clicked into the video, and this mysterious gunner had quickly become a topic of heated discussion. With nothing but a pistol, he had produced results that defied common sense. The assistant also mentioned that after entering the cube, I had switched my main weapon from sword to gun. That detail made Seonga realize the truth. I must have awakened. It wasn't unheard of for someone to abandon their old specialty and master a new weapon after awakening, but awakening at 17, that was far faster than expected. The only pity in her eyes was that my main weapon was a firearm. Back at the academy, the new training module was a simulated duel. Usually, students were paired off against each other with practice weapons that couldn't inflict serious injuries. But for me, there was an exception. The instructor called me up, and once again I found myself beaten down. 18 times in total. Unlike the others, my opponent wasn't a fellow student, but the instructor himself. Since training firearms still required heightened perception, using real guns was too risky for first years. That meant my duels had to be overseen directly by a professional, even with my sharpshooter's eagle eye ability, which let me see his attacks clearly. Keeping up with his speed was another matter entirely. By the end of training, I was drenched in sweat and gasping for air. I grabbed a cola to catch my breath, only to turn my head and catch sight of Yuxia walking away. Given our rocky first impressions, neither of us thought too highly of the other. She might be a character I had created, but her temper was truly unbearable. Still, a thought struck me, something about the backstory I had written for her. I decided it was time to test whether it was true. I suddenly called out to Yuxia and tossed her a can of cola. Caught off guard, she instinctively grabbed it, but looked puzzled, wondering what I meant. She quickly asked if I was trying to provoke her. I explained that during the last training session, I had benefited from her efforts. This was simply a small gesture of goodwill. Of course, I had another reason as well. I wanted to test how much SP I could gain by interacting with members of the main cast. She brushed her hair back casually, then tossed the can back at me. With a sharp tone, she told me not to act as if we were close. That was her first warning. Without another word, she turned and walked away. Yet a few steps later, something felt off. She noticed her handbag felt heavier. Curious, she stopped, opened it, and found another can of cola inside, the one I had secretly slipped in. At first, she was furious and ready to throw it straight into the trash. But after glancing around and seeing no one nearby, she hesitated. Cola wasn't guilty of anything after all, so she placed it back in her bag. I had been watching the whole time, This was exactly the hidden trait I had written for her. Yuxia loved fast food, especially cola and burgers, but her pride never allowed her to admit it in public. Testing this unknown side of her and exchanging just a few words had only earned me 4 SP. Clearly, to gain more, I needed to involve myself in the main storyline. The next turning point was the demon incident at the Weapons Museum. Demons in this world were humans who had formed contracts with devils, trading their souls for immense power. The attack was orchestrated to assassinate a specific figure. In the novel, the main cast happened to be visiting the museum and ended up defeating the demons on the spot. It was the perfect chance for me to join the plot. First, I just needed an opportunity to tag along with them to the museum. That evening, the instructor urged me to return to the dorms. I quickly shut down my computer and left, not noticing the incoming email that had just arrived. Soon enough, my opportunity came: the Cube's club activities. Clubs here were student-run groups covering everything from academics to martial arts. There were over 100 of them, providing not just self-development, but also social connections. The one I chose to join was the Travel Club, for the simple reason that the main cast had joined it too. When I arrived, I found the place crowded with top first-year talents. Even the senior club president looked nervous addressing them. Regaining his composure, he explained the club's purpose: relaxation. Twice a month, they use teleportation to leave the cube and go on trips. For today's welcome event, the destination was nearby, the bustling city of S10. I figured it would be a safe way to collect some SP, but then the president announced group pairings by lottery. That caught me off guard. Was I remembering the storyline incorrectly? To my surprise, I ended up paired with Yuxia once again. She immediately said we could move on our own, just the two of us. I didn't argue. That had been my intention anyway. Before long, we arrived at the S10 Weapons Museum. Its collection was far broader than what the cube offered, and the hallways were crowded with visitors. Nayeon was admiring a bow in one of the displays, which could only mean that Suho was nearby as well. Sure enough, I soon spotted him. I approached, introduced myself as Jin Hajin, and struck up a conversation. He finally recognized me as the one who had chosen a handgun as his main weapon. With so many people around earlier, he hadn't noticed I had joined the travel club too. Suho pointed out that there was a firearm exhibition in another wing and asked if I wanted to check it out. Before I could answer, the ground shook violently. An urgent announcement echoed through the museum. Monsters had appeared outside the building. The repeated warnings quickly spread panic. Fear grew as screams from outside pierced the halls, and soon, people were rushing to escape in a frenzy. Amid the chaos, a young girl was knocked down by the crowd. Just as things were spiraling out of control, a sharp crash rang out, the sound of glass shattering as someone punched through a display case. Everyone froze in shock, staring at Nayeon. Even Suho, who had just rescued the girl, was stunned by the sudden outburst. Nayeon raised his voice, telling everyone to stay calm. The stationed heroes would arrive soon, and if anyone tried to rush outside now, they would only become food for the monsters. After saying this, he pulled a weapon from one of the display cases. Instantly, the museum security system activated, sealing the exits. Nayeon reminded Suho to arm himself as well. Until the heroes arrived, it was up to them to protect the civilians. But before long, sharp footsteps echoed through the hall. Nayeon immediately sensed the unusual aura approaching. The power radiating from it forced him into combat readiness. This was a demon, one of those who traded their souls to devils for power. And in my original design, a villain meant to drive the protagonist's growth. The intruder didn't hesitate, charging straight at Nayeon. Suho drew the weapon he had just taken from the case. According to the novel, this was where Suho should have revealed his hidden strength and crushed the enemy. Instead, what happened next stunned me. Suho was struck hard and sent flying, crashing to the ground right beside me. I froze, unable to process it. This wasn't supposed to happen. In the original storyline, Suho only pretended to struggle at first, but once he released his true power, he completely overwhelmed the demon. Yet here, even while concealing his full ability, he had been seriously injured in a single blow. When Nayeon and I rushed to him, Suho trembled, insisting he was fine, but it was clear he was in no condition to fight. We had to buy him time. Nayeon stepped forward, firing arrow after arrow at the enemy. More than 10 found their mark, yet the demon didn't even flinch. It wasn't regeneration, nor any special ability. His body simply didn't react. Nayeon couldn't understand why his attacks had no effect. Seeing the danger, I shouted for him to dodge, but the demon's claws were already descending, ready to pierce him. At the last moment, Suho intervened, blocking the strike, though his weakened state couldn't withstand the demon's full power. With a violent crash, he was slammed into the ground once again. In that instant, Nayeon loosed another arrow, this one infused with magic. The strike finally drew a reaction, staggering the demon. But instead of falling, the creature roared in fury, abandoning Suho and turning its murderous focus toward Nayeon. The demon's power surged, pressing down on the hole. Fear clawed at me, but I forced myself to remain calm. If normal magic bullets couldn't hurt him, then I needed another way. After all, he was still a character from my novel. That meant his core design hadn't changed. He was aligned with darkness. I activated the system's intervention function, rewriting the attributes of my bullets. It cost over 1,000 SP, but once I saved the adjustment, my rounds transformed into light-based projectiles, perfectly suited to counter dark energy. I aimed at the demon and shouted for Suho to move aside. He rolled away just in time. I pulled the trigger. The modified bullet burst forth, a flash of white piercing the demon's arm. Light spread instantly, purifying the limb into ash. The creature screamed in agony, its claw releasing Neon, who stumbled free. I had bought them time, and that was all Suho needed. With his blade glowing in a radiant arc, he unleashed the true power of the Sword Saint. His strike, capable of cutting through anything, cleaved the demon cleanly in half. The battle was over. The first main storyline had reached its end. Suho staggered to his feet, drained from the effort. That sword technique was so powerful. He could only use it once a day, and even now, it left him barely standing. Neon, on the other hand, was visibly shaken. Though he put on a brave face, deep down he was fragile, and the brush with death had left him rattled. Suho tried to comfort him, but I knew it wouldn't work. In the novel, it was always his brother who came to reassure him. Yet, as his sobs faded into silence, the air around us suddenly grew cold and heavy, as though something unseen had just descended. Both Nayeon and Jisoo looked at me with unfamiliar, questioning eyes. Nayeon trembled violently, then collapsed, unable to hold it in, and vomited. Outside, the monsters were nearly wiped out. Soon, several heroes arrived, including Seonga. Her guild members reported that a demon had appeared inside the museum, but 3 students from Cube Academy had managed to eliminate it. Impressed, Seonga asked who those students were. When she heard Jisoo was among them and had personally taken down the demon, she rushed toward the museum, excited at the chance to meet him. Just then, I walked out wearing my Cube uniform. Recognizing me, she greeted me warmly and began to ask about Jisoo, but I cut in first, pointing out he was still inside. Moments later, a thought struck her. She hadn't said a word, so how did I already know what she wanted? When she turned back, I was gone. Her sudden conversation had startled me too. Could this be another shift in the novel's storyline? After a short rest, I began thinking about why the story was changing. The world already had an extra character, Kim Ha-jin, but my own role should have been minimal. Then it hit me. I wasn't the only author anymore. This novel now had 2 creators, and what happened today might be because of the other one. If that was true, then everything I had predicted from my original story was useless. Just as anxiety set in, my computer chimed with a new notification. It was a message from the other author, once a reader of my work. He thought the main character and his allies faced too little danger, making things dull, so he had rewritten parts of the story. His first change: strengthen the villains. By evening, the incident had wrapped up. The instructor called me and Jisoo over. He had grasped most of the situation and told us to return to school and rest. Jisoo asked about Nayeon, and the instructor explained she had taken sick leave and been taken to the hospital by her family. With nothing more to discuss, he left. Then, Jisoo suddenly called my name. He asked why I had said such strange things to Nayeon earlier. When I looked confused, he reminded me I had mentioned her brother. At once, I understood why they had reacted so strangely. Could there be something wrong with her brother? My expression made Jisoo suspicious, but his headache was too strong, so he let it go. I, however, couldn't. Back at the dorm, I quickly searched for information about Nayeon's family. Her father was Choi Shin-ho, her brother Choi Jin-woo. Everything matched my original story, so why that reaction? Then a news report caught my eye. Choi Jin-woo, during the Mars Project operation, successfully rescued his teammates, but fell into a coma. This shocked me. In the original plot, the Mars Project was a major operation against demons, during which Jin-woo gained great honor. His 13-year-old sister, watching her heroic brother, was filled with pride. That was how I had written it. Another message arrived with a warning. Changes to the story would only be revealed after I noticed them myself. Jin-woo, once Jisoo's strongest ally in later arcs, no longer existed in that role. The author explained that since the protagonist had too many allies, he rewrote Jin-woo's fate. According to the changes, 4 years ago, after becoming a hero, Jin-woo was struck by demonic fire and became a demon seed. No one knew about it yet. Meanwhile, Nayeon sat silently in her hospital bed, sinking into despair. Her father rushed in, worried sick about her. After reassuring him she was fine, she asked if she could visit her brother before being discharged. Surprised but unable to refuse, he agreed. Back in my dorm, I felt a pounding headache. Demons were far more dangerous than ordinary fiends. A demon seed, once matured after 5 to 6 years, would transform a human into a powerful demon. Jin-woo's incubation period was already halfway through. If he awakened, the disaster would be catastrophic. There was only one solution: kill him before he transformed. But it wouldn't be easy. His security would be top tier. No mercenary would accept such a request, and the transformation had no visible signs. I had no evidence to report him. If his awakening came, Jisoo wouldn't have the strength to face him. Even the strongest active heroes would suffer heavy losses. I couldn't let that happen. The only one who could kill Jin Woo was me. Meanwhile, visiting hours ended. After saying goodbye, Nayeon left her brother's room, but she couldn't shake one thought from her mind: the strange man named Kim Hajin.